All right, I think we're live, and for some reason the intro didn't play. So let me correct that with a Badlands intro.
The Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Breaking History. We got a few things to go through. We won't be able to go on for as an extended of a broadcast as we sometimes have due to a bit of a hard stop at 1 o'clock on my end. I don't know about you, Gordon, if that's okay with you, but you're free to continue on after that 1 o'clock mark is over if the muse is still dancing with you. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm all right. Yeah, we were just chatting a little bit before the broadcast was launched about some of the key elements that we've both been thinking about. I know we're going to be chatting a little bit about some of the developments pertaining to the Golden Dome. Again, we touched upon this last week. There's been some new messaging coming out of the Russians and the North Koreans. The Chinese have been very consistent on their position about what this is. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to get your thoughts on that. I'll share some considerations about that too. I know we have King Charles, who yesterday opened up the session of Parliament by coming to Canada. First time we've had an actual sitting monarch, the crown, who has been brought into Ottawa to open up the Parliament. Some absurdities about that I would like to scratch on and touch on. Me being a Canadian, I wanted to share some of the weirdness with my American and other international brethren who watch this show and are trying to still get their minds around this weird circus show called Canada. And then there's some other developments too pertaining to the BRICS. Algeria is now a member of the BRICS Development Bank. We might want to touch on that. The Middle East, there's some interesting developments in the Middle East that I'm sure you're going to have some thoughts about. But before we do any of that, let's do a word from today's sponsor, Goldco. I hope I have the right Goldco video, but let's do this. Okay, here we are. Have you heard about President Trump's impact on gold? Every time Trump's name surges in the headlines, gold goes with it. It happened the day he took office, and it's still going up. Gold doesn't just like Trump, it rallies around him. If you bought gold the day he became president, you would be up almost $400 an ounce by now. Here's the thing. Gold has been used as a store of value for centuries. The government can't easily manipulate it, and it's known as a hedge against market risk and inflation. How high will the price of gold go under Trump's second term? Will gold continue to break record after record in 2025 and beyond? Learn about an IRS loophole that allows you to diversify your savings with gold and silver tax and penalty-free with a free copy of gold and silver kit directly to your doorstep. Plus, you could qualify for up to 10% instant match in bonus silver. Visit badlandsgold.com to learn how you can add gold to your portfolio. That's badlandsgold.com. All right. Okay. So you were mentioning to me that there was some clear official messages that were made by the Russians and the North Koreans pertaining to the Golden Dome. They're obviously not looking or very positively about that, but you have like usual, a positive spin on some of this. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, Gordon. What's your take?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just pull up the story. So last week we talked about the Golden Dome. You and I, we at length went deep into our thoughts on it and how we were in agreement. We kind of both independently came to the same conclusion that it was incongruent with this peaceful golden age that I think Trump has teased many times, the multipolar world order, as Putin has teased many times. They both, in their own kind of sphere of influence, have both teased out this peaceful kind of post new world order world, right? Like this cabal or whatever you want to call it, that had this unipolar cabal that has really decimated the world over the past century through different events and different conflicts. If we can work past that, work through it, bring those people to account, and then kind of establish a new paradigm in the world, we can have peace, like peace through strength, as Trump says. The Golden Dome, well, in concept, I think there might be some merit to having a defense system that protects North America from a potential ICBM or even like a space weapon, because now space has been weaponized, as General Quast has discussed. I don't know if you caught the General Quast interview with Sean Ryan, but if not, I will send you. You definitely need.
No, I watched it. It.
Yeah, that was great. And so, it seemed to me like what I hinted at, or didn't hint, what I said last week is I thought that maybe this was potentially a narrative deployment, because the idea of spending $580 billion over the next 3 years to develop a larger version of the Iron Dome, after we have just watched the Iron Dome fail, fantastically fail against Iran multiple times over the past year and a half. It seemed a little silly. It seems a little silly that we're going to invest a ton of money into like an Iron Dome 2.0 after watching the Iron Dome fail. And it's going to take 3 years to develop. And that also, by announcing it to the world as we're starting it, that kind of like gives all of our adversaries the chance to work on ways to beat that system, right? So when it finally gets rolled out, we would then have new weapon systems that could potentially make it obsolete. Then, not to mention, as Russia and China and North Korea and others are pointing out now, the very declaration to embark on this project is in and of itself a almost like an escalation in conflict, so to speak. And I think the way it's been described as a worldwide missile defense system, I think that's how it's been described, is not just for North America. That's at least how Russia and North Korea are describing it. And so here's the article. This comes from Maria Zakharova, who is the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry. And it says, Russia warns U.S. about Golden Dome scheme. Washington's plans for a global anti-ballistic missile system are eroding strategic stability, the Foreign Ministry has said. The U.S. is taking a reckless approach to global stability through its pursuit of a worldwide anti-ballistic missile defense system, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said. The initiative, backed by President Donald Trump and dubbed the Golden Dome, envisions a layered defense network capable of intercepting long-range threats. The system would include space-based interceptors and options for preemptive strikes. The Congressional Budget Office has projected the program's cost could exceed $542 billion over 2 decades. Zakharova warned on Tuesday the plan directly undermines the foundations of strategic stability, a view she said is also held by China, Addressing a Chinese media inquiry at a regular briefing, she noted that both governments had outlined their shared concerns in a joint statement earlier this month. The statement released on May 8th accused Washington of disregarding the longstanding link between offensive and defensive strategic forces, a principle the two countries described as central to maintaining global equilibrium. Moscow and Beijing also criticized the U.S. declaration of space as a warfighting domain and the fact that the Golden Dome project requires further militarizing it. Zakharova called on the U.S. to reconsider its position and back a Russian proposed treaty aimed at banning the deployment of weapons in space. Such a measure, she argued, would reduce the risk of an arms race beyond Earth's atmosphere. And then it goes on to say earlier on Tuesday, North Korea issued a similar warning, stating that countries perceiving a threat from the U.S. would be compelled to expand their military arsenals in response to the deployment of the Golden Dome. In 2002, U.S. President George W. Bush withdrew from a bilateral treaty with Russia that limited the development of anti-ballistic missile technologies. Bush argued the move was necessary to defend against so-called rogue states. Yeah. So all of that is fascinating, and here's why. There's a few points I want to make here. Number one, the 2002 George Bush move was interesting because as Putin explained to Oliver Stone in 2015 when they did that 4-part interview, one of the first things he did when he came into power, I think it was in 2000, like he came into power in 2000, the year 2000, he became president of Russia. But then in 2001, when Bush became president, he said he went to the Bush administration and said, "Hey, like as a gesture of good faith, why don't we work together, Russia and the United States, to develop an anti-ballistic missile defense array? We both will have the same technology, and that will kind of be a signal to the world that the Cold War is over, and that if we have the same technology to defend against missile systems, then that kind of negates the threat of nuclear war, basically, right?" And what he told Oliver Stone was that George Bush's father, George Bush Sr., told him to pound sand, and he was the one calling the shots at that time, which is just like a fascinating commentary in and of itself. The other points here, like North Korea making a similar statement. Here's that news story: Trump's Golden Dome plan will ignite a nuclear arms race. This is based on a South Korean news broadcast that was relaying messaging coming out of the Korean Central News Agency from North Korea, and the quote is, "A typical product of America, quote, America first, the height of self-righteousness, arrogance, high-handed, and arbitrary practice, and is an outer space nuclear war scenario supporting the U.S. strategy for unipolar domination." Okay, so all of that, to me, like that statement from North Korea, that to me feels like Hulk Hogan level, like WrestleMania commentary. It feels like something you would hear if you were scripting almost like a Saturday Night Live script between like Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. Like that's what that felt like. Like where they're like attacking America first, they're calling him self-righteous, they're talking about the unipolar domination, which is rhetoric that we've used, that Lavrov and Putin have used. And then going back to this article, some of the other points, China obviously is on board with this. I go back to the point I made about why would you announce something like this before you do it? Like I understand the idea of being prepared for all possibilities, but it seems like it is a strategic blunder to announce this to the world if you're planning on doing it, unless you're puffing your chest out and trying to oversell it, kind of like a Sun Tzu, pretend to be strong when you're weak, pretend to be weak when you're strong, right? It seems very, very strange to kind of like make this announcement that you're starting to develop the system. Maybe once you have it developed, you make the announcement that it's been completed. But why establish these expectations before you've even rolled out the technology? That none of it to me just makes sense, which is why I kind of go back to the idea that this is all just like kabuki theater. And then finally, and I'll turn it over to you for commentary. I just wanted to play this video that went viral on Monday of Trump when he was. I think this might have been from Sunday. It was either from Sunday or Monday, but he was asked about. And then General Flynn made a commentary about it, which kind of leans into what I was saying yesterday on Badlands Daily and in the Badlands News Brief. But let's listen to. Oh wait, I'm sorry. This is not the best one. This one's only 9 seconds. There's a. Well, I'm sorry. Why don't you respond to what I said? I'll
sure. Yeah.
News brief.
Well, there's definitely a lot of serious traps to walk back from, and I feel like a lot of this is a very complex bomb that's been set up that has to be deactivated. That's been built up over many decades, right? And I just pulled up, as you were talking, a few images just to remind people of like what is it that the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Russians have had high on their list of concerns. And when you're a Russian grand strategist, a Chinese, North Korean, the thing that you wake up to and you go to bed to, and the thing you think about all day long, is the fact that over the course, especially since World War II, really, but it really accelerated after 9/11, has been this program illustrated by, on the one hand, if you're a Chinese or a North Korean, again, the Russians too, there's a growth of something called the Asia Pacific, or the Indo-Asia Pacific pivot, which had a lot to do. I mean, this thing accelerated in a massive way with Hillary Clinton and under Obama in 2012, where the air-sea battle strategy was first deployed, with the idea that the land wars in the Middle East that had really occupied U.S. Military considerations since 9/11, we're going to pivot away from the Middle East increasingly towards encircling China, with a very similar strategy that had been already unfolded in Russia's perimeter. Here's another set of the U.S. military bases around Russia that you could see very clearly. U.S. and NATO bases together are linked up, encircling Russia on its southwestern side, right? And especially the eastern former Soviet pact countries, but Germany as well has many U.S. managed nuclear warheads and others. So this has been something that's been growing on that front. Putin gave a speech in Berlin, or the Munich Security Conference speech in 2007, where he first outlined Russia's absolute opposition to this, and he called it out by name, where nobody was allowed to speak about the full spectrum dominant strategy in polite society. He just went and did it, and made it very clear that Russia knows that what's behind this is a doctrine that's designed to intimidate Russia and its allies into submitting their sovereignty to a one world authority that would claim unilateral hegemony and sole monopoly use over nuclear weapons, with the idea that here's the idea is, we will be able to destroy Russia's retaliatory capability, China's retaliatory capability, such that it would make it impossible for them to even fight back, so that it would be best if they just submit and give up their claims to sovereignty. So this is the more zoomed out view. Again, let's zoom back into the Pacific. Very highly concerning, and this thing grew, like I said, from Jake Sullivan, who was, I think, the key architect of this with Hillary Clinton, where it began. And today, last time I checked, there's still 158,000 U.S. troops stationed there. The Japanese, which are still occupied by the U.S., 58,000 U.S. troops just in Japan alone, have agreed to certain policies to host long-range missiles on Japanese terrain. They've also changed, what's it called? I think it's the Typhoon system that has a 2,000 kilometer range that has been moving forward. You got B-52s and Diego Garcia that have been nominally stationed there to attack Iran, but also it could be a threat against India. There's a variety of these things. Philippines, Guam as well has been beefed up. Philippines has a number, I think 6 major U.S. bases that are fully independent. South Korea as well. So it's these are, I see as like multi-layered, very complex bombs that need to be deactivated. And I mean, obviously, China, I didn't even bring up Taiwan, right? Which is one of the, you and I have talked about this at length, a key focal point where the Ukraine model is being reapplied to Taiwan with a mixture of Taiwan and Japan. Japan has also seen its pacifist constitution, after World War II. Douglas MacArthur and other allied leaders forced Japan to impose a pacifist constitution, making war illegal. However, as of I think 4 or 5 years ago, that began to change. It's a new constitution that now gives the Japanese the authority to go to war in defense of the United States or any ally that they're locked into. They're also being still, as far as I could see it, still unfortunately brought into the NATO of the Pacific Quad strategy has still not been completely given up upon yet. So that's something which, the Chinese have been working hard to try to build economic relationships, to try to remind Japan that it would be better to do business and deals and work together, since most of Japan's exports go to China and vice versa anyway. That's their primary trading partner. Same thing for South Korea. Same thing for Taiwan. Over 50% of Taiwan's GDP is tied to economic activity with China. Much more so as far as like economic gravitational forces, much more so than with the United States. So they're trying to like really speak common sense, and I think it's a language that Trump is inclined to speak as well, looking for deals, looking for economic opportunities. So I think the lowering of the tariffs was a good step. Where there was a freak out whether the U.S. was going to go for whatever it was, 145% tariff on Chinese products, and China was going to go for 125% tariffs on U.S. products a couple of weeks ago. Then it was re-announced that, okay, a deal was reached. It's going to go down to 10% on Chinese, on U.S. goods coming into China, and something like 30% or something of Chinese percent on Chinese goods coming into the U.S. So much more reasonable. But that's like real. These are real strategies. Here's a third image just to show as well of some of the specific doctrines that Obama oversaw with the belligerent program design.
That's a powerful image, because that really does like highlight like how there's like an encirclement of Eurasia occurring.
And it even goes through the asymmetric like regime change programs in the Middle East as well. That's designed to weaken the whole Eurasian development. And the third thing I'll just point out too, and the last thing here, is this image of the April 2024 Arctic Security Defense Update for the Canadian military, which also called for installing long-range missiles for the very first time in the Canadian Arctic, and re-amplifying NORAD's roles and powers that would also involve space-based weaponry too. So that's something that Justin Trudeau brought into play. Mark Carney endorsed it. As far as I could tell, Mark Carney still endorses it and even has said that he's open to taking part in the Iron Dome. And I don't trust Carney, and I don't trust the King, who's still in Canada as of today. He opened up the Parliament, but that's the sort of thing that the Russians and the North Koreans are concerned about. And you're right. I mean, the type of language used in the most recent message is so extremely over the top, and the choice is either that it is a bit of, as you say, kayfabe. Possibly it might be, I hope it is, or it might be that they are actually legitimately freaked out, which I'm also open to believe, because this is a sick idea that's been around for decades, growing and growing. And they might be trying to say, like, maybe under Trump, this is a benign thing, perhaps, where it would be more defensive, but under anybody else, this could be used both to keep Americans, under control, locked into the dome, and also to use as a threat to foreign governments that might be deemed enemies to be destroyed by whatever power might in the future take over control of North America. So I think those are things that are fresh in my mind.
Well, so like let's look at this from all angles, because I think it's important that we don't just have rose-colored glasses on and just think that the world is just going to be a utopia. Once we vanquish the bad guys, we're just gonna live in a utopia, and everyone's gonna be friends and hold hands and sing kumbaya. That's an unrealistic way of looking at the world. We can't guarantee it just because we're going to be friends with Russia and China in the immediate future after this is all said and done, that, 50 years from now, we're going to continue to all be on the same page. But, so therefore, I've also heard General Quast talk about the need to develop defense technologies for weapons that can be deployed in the upper atmosphere, like space. So I do think that there is absolutely merit to the idea of developing those technologies. Where I think that this is a little bit more of like WWE kind of Trumpomania wrestle theater, is number one, the fact that we're calling it the Golden Dome. Because as soon as you call it the Golden Dome, as soon as Donald Trump brands it the Golden Dome, I mean, he's taking a concept that was the Iron Dome, in Israel, and he's giving it a Trump branding. And this is immediately what comes to mind is the Trump Tower penthouse, where it's like the whole thing is like covered in gold trim. And it's just this picture is just embodies Donald Trump, like the real estate developer. And so I feel like that gives it a little bit of like almost a cartoonish branding to it. You also have this video that went viral on Sunday that I did find, and let's listen to what Trump says. I want everyone to focus, especially towards the end, of how Trump, first of all, how he like insults the reporter, and then how he like talks about Putin.
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with.
And he's being, just for context, he's being asked about the attacks that Russia has been making on Kiev, which we know are responses to attacks that Kiev made on Russia, missile attacks. And the report is that during those attacks, Putin's helicopter was flying to Kursk last week for that visit that he made, and that 50, I think 49 or 50 drones were shot down that were attacking the helicopter, that were trying to bring it down. That's the official story, at least. And so Trump is asked about that here in a minute, and he says he doesn't know anything about that. But before, he's asked, what do you think about Putin firing missiles into Kiev?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
President, what do you want to do about that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you? You're totally fake. All right, any other questions? Not even a little bit. He's killing people. And something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
All right. So the way that he says, I don't like it, like that feels like to me the character, like that feels like and Bill Maher. Bill Maher came out like a month ago. He got invited to the White House. He went on like his show right after that, and he said, look, after hanging out with Donald Trump, I realized this guy's been playing a character the whole time. And the person, like the actual real Donald Trump, is not the person that you see on television. The person you see on television is definitely a character he's playing. And I think a lot of us have been, fooled by this character. And I think he's playing the character for a reason. That those are Bill Maher's words. I'm paraphrasing. And I think Bill Maher is probably smart enough to have figured that out a while ago. I think that just gave him a convenient opportunity to explain that to the audience so the audience would understand it. But now the question is, why would Trump do this? So like, why would Trump like escalate this rhetoric and kind of make this seem so severe? This guy who's posting this, Sean Farish, I think is his name. He's the guy who does all the Trump impressions that like went to the White House and, does a really good impression of Donald Trump. And he says, Trump is livid about what Putin is doing with Ukraine. I haven't heard Trump this mad in a while. And that seems to be the response from the rest of the media. Like everyone is like, oh my God, Trump is so mad at Putin. Well, look at what the rest of the world is doing right now. Germany threatens the European Union states with loss of funding. Chancellor Merz has warned Slovakia and Hungary over their opposition to the bloc's Russia policy. And the TLDR is that the EU wants to impose new sanctions on Russia. And you have certain member states like Slovakia and Hungary and others who are opposed to it and say, hey, we need to de-escalate the situation. We shouldn't be escalating the situation. And that's the exact words that the Kremlin are using to describe these new sanctions. This is a serious escalation. Trump has also talked about lifting some of the sanctions against Russia. So you have other players around the world who are. You also have, let's see, where is it? Keith Kellogg, one of Trump's generals. This is the guy who was originally appointed as the envoy to resolve the Ukraine-Russia dispute. And then Russia came out and said, you know what? We don't trust this guy. He's no longer represents our interests. So he became the Ukraine envoy. And then that's when Trump sent Steve Witkoff from the Middle East to Russia to start meeting with Putin. And he's met with him, I think, 3 times face to face. And he's now the Russian envoy in that discussion. And so whether or not Keith Kellogg is, speaking on behalf of the regime or speaking or, doing his own kayfabe on behalf of Trump, right now he's talking about a reckless World War III comment that Medvedev, I'm sorry, his name is
Medvedev.
Yeah, there you go.
Channel your inner Russian.
Yeah, there you go. That he said because he made commentary about things that would happen. He was making his own kind of escalation and his own kind of rhetoric that he's been doing a lot of. That guy has been. I feel like he is kind of Putin's. Because Putin is very cool, calm, collected. He's like the adult in the room, and I feel like Dmitry Medvedev is like the warmonger. He kind of plays that role in Putin's administration. He's the one who threatened to nuke London and Paris last year. Yeah. So I think what Trump does here is 2 things. Number one, by coming out over the top, like on top of everybody else, and now we're no longer talking about sanctions. We're talking about nuclear war. So Trump has taken the temperature and cranked it all the way up to super high. So it's no longer a slow boil of the frog in the pot. It's the temperature goes up so high the frog jumps out of the pot, which is the essence of what I call accelerationism, in a positive spin. I know that there's negative connotations of accelerationism and people, anarchists wanting to destroy the world, or destroy society. But I think from the positive spin of accelerationism is that if you accelerate the narrative so quickly, it almost demands a resolution because you're basically at the point of shit or get off the pot. It's all right, we're going to have a nuclear war. Well, are we actually going to have a nuclear war or are we going to hash it out? And I would use the China tariffs as an example. China, we went from talking about, a 25% tariff against some Chinese goods. That was in the first Trump administration, 2018. 25% tariff against, I think it was $34 billion worth of Chinese goods, which now seems like nothing. Then all of a sudden we were talking about 250% tariff on all Chinese goods, and then you had Kevin O'Leary from Canada talking about a 400% tariff on all Chinese goods, and now all of a sudden we're back down to 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods, and it's it got so crazy so quickly that it had to be resolved. They couldn't just sit there and let that hang out there forever. 250% tariff on all Chinese goods. There's no way that's gonna be practical. We need to get in the room and talk about it and hash it out. So it feels like this is the same strategy, understanding that there are a lot of bad actors in the field who are actually trying to escalate a war between Russia and the United States. Yeah. And by sucking all the oxygen out of the room, by what Trump I think is doing is bringing all the attention on him as opposed to allowing these people to have any attention. And to me, again, this is why I think the whole Trumpomania, as fun and as silly as that framing is, I do think that there's something to it because, quote unquote, real analysts, the analysts who are on the super serious analysts on CNN and on, who write for the Financial Times and all that, they have no idea what to make of this. They're like, what the hell is happening right now? How is this actually a thing where we're talking about, where Trump is talking about Putin being a psychopath and how now you have Russian officials talking about nuclear war with America. Kim Jong-un is now talking about nuclear war. I thought we had peace with him. So none of it makes sense from a practical standpoint, but it does make sense if you look at it as a antagonistic WWE kabuki theater framing.
Yeah, it's weird, because there's like so many to parse out the intentional kabuki theatrics versus that wear the clothing of crazy, but actually have a rationale behind it. From the wheat and the chaff, right? From the actual crazies, like there's a whole multi-generational decay process in strategic thinking that has also unfolded over the course of really the Rand Corps takeover of cybernetics analysis and systems analysis into strategic doctrine that removed the practice of drawing out military strategies from people who actually had warfighting knowledge of how the military and how war works, to technocrats with zero experience and only mathematical prowess and sort of an addiction to thinking of themselves as game masters, with a bit of a god complex. So that sort of Rand Corps takeover happened in the U.S. over the dead body of JFK, and it got worse and worse and worse, right? With Brookings Institute, other think tanks, the Atlantic Council generating, the Hudson's Institute generating scenarios that were applied to managing our economic systems, our military systems, our culture, how we program schools for several generations in a row, which has generated now, I think, the most dangerous, abundant generation of 40 to 60-year-old technocrats who are insane. Like they have zero attachment to reality. They express themselves like, I was listening to just a few days ago, Merz, the new chancellor of Germany, gave a lying presentation. He just lied, but I'll just play it because it's worth listening to. Where this guy whose grandfather was a leading Nazi, not just like a goose-stepping, soldier. This guy was a leading SA Nazi official. His father was proud of his grandfather's legacy. He seems to be carrying it on, just like Ursula von der Leyen, right? These guys have the same idea of creating sort of this fascist, corporatist regime of control based upon getting rid of national sovereignty in Europe. That's what's been behind the growth and the creation of the European Union for the past 60, 70 years. But so let's just hear Merz lying out of his teeth.
Es gibt keinerlei Reichweitenbeschränkungen mehr für Waffen, die an die Ukraine geliefert worden sind, weder von den Briten noch von den Franzosen noch von uns, von den Amerikanern auch nicht. Das heißt also, die Ukraine kann sich jetzt auch verteidigen, indem sie zum Beispiel militärische Stellungen in Russland angreift. Das konnte sie bis vor einiger Zeit nicht. Das hat sie bis vor einiger Zeit auch bis auf ganz wenige Ausnahmen nicht getan. Das kann sie jetzt. Wir nennen das im Jargon Long Range Fire, also auch mit Waffen die Ukraine auszustatten, die militärische Ziele im Hinterland angreifen. Und das ist der entscheidende qualitative Unterschied in der Kriegsführung der Ukraine. Russland greift völlig rücksichtslos zivile Ziele an, bombardiert Städte, Kindergarten,
I'll just stop that there. Basically, for those who are just listening, that's Merz saying in a conference that for the first time ever, France and England and Germany, and he even was speaking for the USA, saying the USA have all agreed to allow long-range missiles to be stationed in Ukraine to deliver long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. Ukraine's just 300 kilometers from Moscow. And what a great thing this is. Serious analysts reviewed the claims he was making and found most of that to be untrue. I mean, he's given permission. He has personally given permission for these things, but Germany has also been an occupied state, basically hosting, tons of U.S. military bases, U.S.-run nuclear warheads. He's trying to enmesh the U.S. I could believe that he's trying to enmesh the USA by speaking belligerently into this type of insane doctrine that would involve taking another step or a leap closer into a full confrontation with Russia. But he's not speaking for any of these countries. They did not sign off on this. So either he's playing the kayfabe game or he's just crazy. I think he's part of the crazy faction. So it's like I was saying, to parse out where there's the potential of strategic crazy versus actual crazy is a dangerous game. It's one I'm not always comfortable with navigating. Like who's going to be parsed out. I do tend to believe that your assessment has credence to it, but there is so many. And I mean, he's also behind. What did he say recently? He said that he wants to give. Oh yeah, he endorses the destruction of the Crimean Bridge. So this one bridge that connects Crimea to Russia. He's called for it being destroyed.
I remember that, yeah,
as well. We know that there's been also he's said that Germany should no longer even control the Nord Stream pipeline. Nord Stream 2 was annihilated. Nord Stream 1, which still could feasibly be rehabilitated very fast to process Russian, natural gas into Europe. He said that should no longer, even though Germany paid for it, it should no longer be under the authority of Germany or any German government, and it should all go to the control of the European Commission to control its destiny, basically trying to remove another element from any possible dialogue that could feasibly happen were sane factions to ever take influence once again in the German political spectrum. So he's basically saying, if that should ever happen, we want to make sure that they have nothing to work with, nothing to offer the Russian side, in order to make sure that this confrontational policy with rearm Europe, that's the new war agenda that Europe has, rearm Europe is the big thing, is going to be unbroken, with a new military bank modeled on the World Bank is what a number of these European governments have called for, which is just going to kill a lot of people. And like, I think it was Chancellor Kohl, like 30 years ago said, there's no such thing as a limited nuclear war. If that's really what people are thinking, that doesn't exist. What does exist is a nuclear war that happens on German territory. That's what is meant when people say limited nuclear war. It's just a nuclear war that happens in Germany. So yeah, there's all of these factors going on, but I see that you have a little sparkle in your eye. So what are your, I'm gonna throw it back at you.
Yeah. Well, so like all the points you make are absolutely spot on, and so I would point out that again, I go back to the why. Like when people say, so why are we doing this? Because I know there are people who are listening right now who may or may not follow like all my musings and my writing. Maybe they do and they don't agree with it. Why would Trump do this? Like, what is the point of doing this silly little theater with Putin? Why not just come out and just tell the truth and just like we can all move on? Well, think about this. That old saying, fear travel, like bad news travels around the world before good news even gets out of bed, right? Like fear spreads much quicker than happiness or good news, right? So if Trump, like, let's just assume that Trump were sitting, I mean, how many politicians or public figures have been out there for several years saying we shouldn't have war with Putin? There are people in the U.S. political atmosphere, like environment, who have been saying that we shouldn't have war with Putin. We shouldn't have war with Russia. We should de-escalate. We should figure out a way to become friends with them. We should, find common ground. Nobody listens to those people because they don't get headlines. They don't get, they don't go viral. That kind of messaging just doesn't get attention. The messaging that gets attention are people who are stoking fear, the people who are, saying things that all of a sudden require communicate crisis and require immediate attention. Those are the people who get attention. And so if Trump were sitting here talking about peace with Putin, sitting here talking about de-escalating things, which he has actually said, he has been talking about that for years actually, would he be getting the attention, or would the MERS be getting the attention? Would the Van der Laans be getting the attention? Would the warmongers be getting the attention? I would argue the warmongers would be the ones getting the attention, and no one would be paying attention to what Trump was saying, even though it is Donald Trump and he does make headlines. So again, by saying things that are far more severe than what the warmongers are saying, like the people like John Bolton, because John Bolton isn't going to come out day one and say, let's have a nuclear war with Russia. They're going to start with, calling Putin a bad guy. Then they're going to do sanctions. Then they're going to do worse sanctions. Then they're going to do a proxy war, which we have now. Then they're going to do a kinetic war. Then they're going to do a nuclear war. It's like an incremental step. It's like a slow boil up to, something very, very severe. If Trump just starts day one and says, we're going to have a nuclear war with Russia, or we're going to have, serious consequences for Putin, playing with fire. That's the rhetoric that's the rhetoric that Trump says, right? Or here's the headline: Putin is playing with fire. And these are Truth Social posts that Trump's putting out where he says that Vladimir Putin is playing with fire. If it weren't for me, this is a quote from Trump's Truth Social, if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad in all caps. I actually think that is 100% truth he's saying right there. I think he is speaking truth right there, that Trump has made sure that things that have not happened to Russia that would have happened maybe if Hillary Clinton were president right now. And so again, like, I just think that by cranking the temperature all the way up, you are driving resolution. Conflict drives resolution. Friction creates conflict, and that's storytelling 101. And so by creating this crisis and pushing it all the way to the very limit, it demands that there's a resolution much quicker than if we were to drag this out from their 2 years and then end with ICBMs being fired at one another. And so, that's where I think the narrative warfare comes in. And Trump, as we all know, is a master of narrative warfare. So let's see. I know we're running short on time here because we only got about 12 minutes left.
Oh yeah, right.
Are there any? Why don't we go ahead and do another ad? I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with the Golden Dome, but if not, why don't we do an ad read and then we can pivot to another point?
Let's do an ad read quickly here. Let me just get it up. And what do we have in it? So there's a lot of videos we've got. Okay, is it Safe Streets? I think it's Safe Streets. Let me go see. It is Safe Streets. So let me just hit play on that. And that didn't play. 1 second, let's try it again. There we go. Okay. Now's the perfect time to secure your home and your loved ones. Get free ADT smart home security system valued at $1,200 from ADT authorized provider Safe Streets. Plus, get a Google Nest doorbell camera at no cost and a $200 Visa gift card from Safe Streets, the most trusted name in home security with more than 106,000 4.9-star Trustpilot reviews. Visit getsafestreets.com/Badlands or call 925-529-6541. That's 925-529-6541 to speak to a representative today. $99 customer installation charge and purchase of new monitoring service required. For their termination fee apply. Okay, I think there's some weird grammar there, but okay, good. Safe Streets. I guess the one little thing I just wanted to throw out there, for my little mini considerations I had last night, having watched not all but most of the proceedings around the figure of King Charles coming to Canada. It's a twisted, sick joke. I'll just throw a few minutes, not even. But I just want for people to get a sense of the pageantry and the absurdity of the whole thing. So King Charles, I lost Gordon. Can I be heard? I hope I can be heard. Let's see. Can I actually be heard, or am I the one who lost connection? Let's find out. I have to go to the Rumble channel and see. Okay, comments. Can I get a comment to see if people can hear me? Okay, there's Gordon. He's come back in. Okay, there's Gordon.
That was really strange, man. I just got like a blue screen with a frowny face, and it says like we've hit a critical error in your computer and must shut down now. It's like,
at least it gave you a frowny face, so it felt some sympathy.
I was like, that's weird.
That's cute. Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was me. All right, cool. So yeah, we can go on a little bit after 1 o'clock, like a little bit. There's a bit of flexibility I have. But here, let me just play for the first time. The last time this happened was in 1977, I believe, when Queen Elizabeth was brought in by Pierre Elliott Trudeau to open the Parliament. Now, this isn't that big of a deal because, again, the typical Parliament session opens with always the Governor General, and the Governor General, which opens it, is the hand of the legal entity representing the Crown anyway. So to have the physical being there legally is no different, but it's, I think, a bit of a reminder. Like Mark Carney is really doubling down with his Canada-British relationship. And there's something about that is both absurd, but also real and concerning. And I'm just going to play a couple of seconds here just to give people a sense of the absurd pageantry of it. So here is a little clip when after there was like a 28 horse chariot that brought Charles in after he flew in on an Airbus CC-330 massive plane, spewing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And, it's a bit of a hypocrisy because he's like the big eco warrior king, trying to get everybody to consume less, shut down carbon dioxide. But he's like running around the world in these giant, unnecessarily big Airbuses. He had a 100-person royal salute of the Canadian Guard, and something like 26 cars accompanied him to and from the Parliament. So, and then when he got in there, you got full brass orchestra. Can you see it?
Formé-là, que c'est le plaisir de Sa Majesté.
I can't even do it. So basically, head of state sitting in the little kid's chair right next to King Charles and Camilla. Now Charles gives off this speech, calling for Canada's commitment to the 30-30-30 UN Sustainable Development Goals of putting 30% of their land, 30% of their waters under conservation and untouched by human activity by 2030. Biden was trying something similar. And ironically, Carney states that Charles's, quote, appearance underscores the sovereignty of Canada. That was the reason why when he was asked, why are you bringing the king in? He's like, to express the sovereignty of Canada. Now, in most normal countries, the sovereignty is like a sovereign nation is made up of sovereign people. In the case of Canada, it's the sovereignty literally means that one guy, because he's literally the fount of all honors. And the idea is that if he wills it, we have rights. If he doesn't, we don't. And the entire shadow government is built up around that. On top of that, this guy owns something like 6.6 billion acres of land. He has, like, in all just of the Commonwealth countries alone, the biggest windmill farms. Like 50% of all windmills in Great Britain are owned by the Crown. That receives 25% of all revenues, just to him, just to keep him alive with all of his castles as a big welfare recipient. That's his whole purpose, is just to receive welfare and to own hereditary possessions. And somehow this is seen as a legitimate piece of grandeur. You even had a guy called the Usher of the Black Rod that had to walk in and with a big funny hat with feathers open up the session as well, without which there is no legal justification for the Parliament. So it's insane. It's completely insane. But Carney said something really weird, where he said in his opening remarks, I didn't get the timestamp, but he basically said something creepy for those who actually like know about deep history. He's like, Canada is Athens. We are the Athenian democracy in the modern age, and America, they are Rome. And he said, we are not just any Athenian democracy. We are Athens in the Golden Age. Now he's referring to Pericles, because that's known as the Golden Age of Athens, is Pericles. Now Pericles came in and oversaw the Peloponnesian
War.
Peloponnesian War. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Which was a complete monstrosity. It basically took anything good that was there in Athens beforehand and stabbed all of Athens' allies in the back under an oligarchical takeover that was using, people like Pericles as a rhetorician, a sophist, basically somebody who could use words like an Obama to charm the masses, pour out, give them a lot of like free stuff, universal basic income. Everybody was like just getting money. The treasuries were emptied in order to buy people's votes. As they became more soft-minded and allowed for these immoral decisions to be made, whereby Athens began to become a giant bully, imposing its will onto the weak city-states all around it. It started going to war with its former allies and started demanding that everybody start paying fealty to Athens. But again, Pericles, and He also built like this wall. It was weird around Athens, which is strange, which induced a bunch of diseases to take over, where Pericles actually died from one of these diseases because they cut off all trade in and out of Athens. And there was like no sanitation at a certain point when the economic system broke down. It was disease ridden. Pericles dies of a pandemic. And Athens is just ruined. This is like the world that Socrates is coming into, trying to correct in whatever way he can. And Plato is trying to carry on that fight. But it's clear that it was run by mystery cults and controllers that had actually represented the real hand of Persia behind the scenes, because formerly Persia was Athens' enemy before that, and all of a sudden Athens becomes the ally of Persia and the enemy of all of its allies. So the High Persian Empire, which was sort of the seat, the marcher lord of Babylon, right? For those who know their history, right? It's like that was when Babylon realized that it needed a better enforcer of the will of the high priesthood of Marduk. Their current regime under the Babylonian administrations of Nebuchadnezzar was not sufficient to impose their will and achieve their type of global dominance. And this is where they needed to transpose and take over the influence of this small little client state called Persia, which they said, okay, you will be what we use as our instrument to then grow and impose our will to power onto the many. And that's what Persia ended up increasingly becoming after Cyrus the Great had died. And, Artaxerxes and on all of the followers, those who came after Cyrus, ended up carrying out more and more that policy of Babylon's will. And Athens was like one of the few proud city-states that was able to viably fight against that, as well as Rome. Ironically, in the early stages when Rome and Carthage had a strategic alliance, Athens and Rome were able to resist this. Sicily, to a certain degree, was able to resist this. Syracuse. But so what Carney is referencing is a disgusting transformation of Athens in that perverse golden age. This is not a real golden age. This is like a sick period of apparent abundance, but actual moral rot that resulted in Athens' own self-annihilation under the true hand of the priests. So
not unlike the time we find ourselves in right now.
Unlike. Yeah.
So Mark Carney,
these guys know their history. That's why I got a little.
He's kind of telling the truth.
He kind of is in a weird, perverse way, right? And there's like a bit of an insider joke going on between him and the king, because he's like looking at the quick king with a smile, and you have all of these idiot parliamentarians hearing things they don't understand at all, acting like they do because they're politicians, clapping away like buffoons. They have no idea what they're hearing. So yeah, I got some heebie-jeebies when I heard that. A little bit in some way, but
that video is laugh out loud funny with like the horns and the trumpets and everything, and because that was in Canadian Parliament.
Yeah, that was yesterday. Yeah,
and so King Charles is sitting on the throne, and they pull out like a folding chair for Mark Carney to sit on.
yeah, get the little kids chair. It's the dinkiest, rattiest looking chair too. Like it's so degrading as an image.
Okay. So I don't remember one time seeing Justin Trudeau do any of this stuff. Like I don't remember one time seeing Justin Trudeau like host Queen Elizabeth or anyone from the royal family like in this capacity. That like can you think of any time like that where Queen Elizabeth came and sat on a throne and Justin Trudeau sat next to her, and it was, I just don't remember any of this.
Well, you do get this. Like I'll say whenever the Governor General does open up the Parliament with a throne speech, that's what happens. So you have the Governor General usually sitting on that like golden throne, and then the Prime Minister is sitting in the gimp chair next to the Governor General. That's like a thing.
The cock chair.
Yeah, but I've never seen it. I don't think Justin Trudeau ever did it with the actual active like sitting monarch per se. Also, I don't think that the monarch respected Justin nearly enough to do it. Like, whereas Carney's brother is the asset, not the chief financial officer managing all of Prince William's estates. So, these guys are highly vetted, highly enmeshed, and, Prince William is likely going to become the king pretty soon, considering they say that Charles has cancer and is going to die soon. So that means that Mark Carney's brother is highly positioned as a key figure managing something which we know has been tied to black budget operations for many, many generations, hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not a little thing. So his whole family has some weird Jesuitical overlaps into the Gnostic underground, shaping a lot of the deep occult practices of the world system. So I think, yeah, that's when Carney came in, they're doing like a bit of a, oh yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to just show here quickly. There's something called the, so here, let me just do one more screen share here. It's pretty useful on this point. And I'd kick myself in the ass if I forgot to do this. So this is the London Guardian from 2003. It says mystery lifted on the Queen's powers. So for the first time, there was a unveiling. They say here that the veil of mystery surrounding the royal prerogative was lifted when a list of them was published in a move intended to encourage greater transparency. The prerogatives, which includes the power to declare war, is handed. This is 2003. Right? This has been around for centuries, but nobody knew about it till it was officially unveiled by a bit of a coming out party earlier that year, or that very month of October. The prerogative, which includes the power to declare war, right, is handed from monarchs to ministers and allows them to take action without the backing of the parliament. In a move intended to encourage greater accountability, the Commons Public Administration Committee published a list of the little understood powers which it persuaded Sir Hayden Phillips, permanent secretary to the Department of Constitutional Affairs, to supply. Over the years, when people have asked the government to say what the prerogative powers there are, they have always refused to do so, said the committee's chairman. It tells us largely what we know, but it is a small victory to have the government say at least what it thinks they are. Got it here. The powers include those that allow governments to regulate the civil service, issue passports, make treaties, appoint and remove ministers, and grant honors. They also include the prerogative of mercy, which is no longer used to save condemned men from the scaffold, but can be exercised to remedy miscarriages of justice. Here we are. It said that there were still significant aspects of domestic affairs in which the powers could be used, and it accepted that the conduct of foreign affairs remains very reliant on the exercise of prerogative powers, and that they can, quote, still to some extent adapt to changed circumstances. Got another thing here. One second. It says specifically that they're not limited to. Let me just stop this here. It says that they're not limited to domestic affairs, the appointment and dismissal of ministers, the summoning of prorogation and the dissolution of parliament, the royal assent to bills, the appointment and regulation of the civil, the commissioning of officers in the foreign forces, directing the disposition of the armed forces in the UK and other Commonwealth nations, the appointment of Queen's Counsel, issuing withdrawal of passports, granting of honors, creation of corporations by charter, foreign affairs, making treaties, declarations of war is a big one, deployment of armed forces overseas, recognition of foreign states, and accreditation and reception of diplomats. And the assistant to King Charles has said that this represents a constitutional coup. And he's saying this in a he said that in 2013, Jonathan Dimbleby wrote that Charles' succession to the throne, he was talking about this 10 years before it happened. He said that his throne, things would become much more hands-on, and that a quiet constitutional revolution is afoot, says King Charles's assistant in 2013. So basically what they're trying to do, up until now, there's been sort of a soft influence of the crown over the shadow government administrating the world, British Commonwealth. And now they want this to be more impactful. And you have King Charles as well. When he was still prince, you had things called the spider memos that came out indicating that he was actually crafting policy, putting a lot of pressure on parliamentarians to pass various environmental protection bills and other things to bring Britain into COP and these sorts of things. He's also the guy who was selected to unveil the Great Reset for the World Economic Forum. He's a disciple of, or he was trained by the Great Reset crowd. Klaus Schwab, no exception, founder of the Sustainable Business Initiative with Mark Carney, that Mark Carney drafted. So you have this thing that's going to becoming more, they're trying to normalize the idea that the crown is an active agency and not just some symbolic thing like we've been brainwashed to think it has been for the past century or so. So that's part of what Mark Carney's open mandate has been. So I'm really hoping that Trump is able to navigate with this thing, because I think this represents pure Satan. In my evaluation of the creature, this is like one of the most subtle old forces of old power and old evil that is running right up to try to manage the North American continent as a jurisdiction. So again, I really hope Trump understands how to fight this dragon, so-called, and is not blindsided by some of its subtleties. But
isn't it? Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting that like you said? Because I agree with you. I think this is represent like Satan. This is Satan coming out and presenting himself as the future ruler of the world, in my opinion, like, or at least his disciples doing it on his behalf. Isn't it interesting that this is happening at this moment in time, where before it was kind of speculative and now it's becoming more and more provocative and more like overt? And to that point, let me show you this. You may have seen this, but kind of to tie this all together, Donald Trump offers Canada free Golden Dome defense protection if it gives up its sovereignty. U.S. president says Defense Shield will cost its northern neighbor $61 billion if it does not become the 51st state. I mean, just look at the smoke smile here and this ridiculous, picture. And he said, I told Canada, which very much wants to be a part of our fabulous Golden Dome system, that it will cost $61 billion if they remain a separate but unequal nation. But it will cost $0, all caps, if they become our cherished 51st state. The U.S. president wrote on the Truth Social platform on Tuesday they are considering the offer. And then the spokesperson for Mark Carney said, the prime minister has been very clear at every opportunity, including his conversation with President Trump, that Canada is an independent, sovereign nation and it will remain one. So again, I think what Trump is doing there is like very cartoonish rhetoric that we're hearing. It's like, this is not he's negotiating in public, but he's doing so in a very almost silly way that guys like Mark Carney, who are these very serious, probably Satan worshiping bankers, have no idea how to deal with. Like, they're like, what do we even say to something like this other than just no? But Trump, again, he's just sucking all the oxygen out of the room by putting all the attention on himself. And again, the question, why? Look at this news story. EU to call on members to reduce water consumption. Brussels aiming to cut down water use by at least 10% by 2030, according to a draft plan. So it's like they are like, this is the great reset here. Like, they are still plowing forward with this idea that they're going to destroy Europe through this like Malthusian idea that humans are a plague and they need to be that needs to be the vaccine basically is the great reset, right? Yeah. So I think by putting the pinch on these EU elites, Trump and Putin together are really exposing these people, isolating them separate from the European people, and really making it very clear to the European people that they need to overthrow these people, like, as soon as possible. They need to overthrow these people, and not necessarily kinetically. I think that can be done peacefully, but maybe not. I mean, there might be situations where that's not entirely possible, given the robust measures that they've put in place over generations, if not centuries, of preparation, all the redundancies they have and put in place. So it is kind of like a little bit of a scary time, but Trump is making it a little more lighthearted with his kind of goofy deployments. I also think he's making these people look like absolute jackasses. I think they're the ones, funny enough, they're the ones here who look like jackasses, not Donald Trump, even though he's the one who's kind of acting like a cartoon character.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Well, that we went through quite a bit in only an hour and 8 minutes. So I think we did pretty well. I know there's a lot we didn't touch on that I'm sure the world will give us more to add, more fuel for the fires of conversation by next week when we meet back again. I think next week, what day is it going to be actually? Next
should be
Wednesday
there's 31 days in May, so it'll be the 4th. June the 4th.
It's the 4th,
Yes.
June 4th.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So that's actually like the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. Oh, it's funky, eh? Can you hear me?
It's getting funky on my end.
Okay.
I don't know why, but yeah, it's getting funky on my end. But
Yeah,
everyone
it's a little funky on my end too. But I was gonna say,
everyone just hit the thumbs up in case it crashes again. Everyone just hit the thumbs up. I will be on Altered States tonight at 9:00, filling in for Brad. So I'm sure Zach and I will talk about some geopolitical stuff. And then my show on Friday, I'll go deeper into geopolitics, obviously. But yeah.
Sounds good. All right, Gordon, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Till next week.
See y'all next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.